Happy New Month, people, and welcome to the morning programs, the Dailies on Equa Television International. It's a brand new day again for you to actually set out to do something great with your life. I'm your host, Sarah Elisha Dasham, and my co-host is Rachel Tanze. Rachel, good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
Fine, thank you. Happy New Month.
Same to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be running through the newspaper reviews, and you can actually drop your comment on our Facebook or YouTube pages, and we'll actually read it live on the show. And I'll be starting with the first paper this morning, which is the Punch newspaper. The first story here: federal government exceed loan target by 1.12 trillion naira, borrow 5.3 trillion naira. Naira devaluation will worsen Nigerians' food energy crisis. This is coming from the World Bank. The shrinking value of the Nigerian naira and currency of the most developing economy are driving up food and fuel price in ways that could deepen the food and energy crisis that many of them already face, according to the World Bank latest commodity market outlook report. In US dollar terms, the prices of most commodities have declined from their recent peaks amid concern of an impending global recession, the report documented. It further noted that from the Russia invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 through the end of last month, the price of Brent crude oil in the US dollars fell nearly 6%, yet because of the currency depreciation, almost 60% of oil importing in emerging market and developing economies saw an increase in domestic currency oil prices during this period. According to the Washington-based bank, nearly 90% of these economies also saw a larger increase in wheat prices in local currency terms compared to the rise in the US dollars. It said elevated prices of energy commodities that serve as inputs to agricultural production have been driven up by food prices. And this is really a sad one, looking at this, Rachel, the fact that our naira keep devaluing, and we are also actually looking at worst Nigerian food energy, like the prices. That means that it's actually looked towards more inflation.
Of course.
And then I think the last inflation price we saw, which was about 21%, that was for actually September. Yeah. So hopefully we'll be seeing what the inflation is for October. Presently, with the scarcity of fuel, you know that definitely transportation is really going to increase.
Of course.
Not just in those areas, but it has actually spread to other parts, not just the Abuja or Lagos, but even down to other areas. This fuel scarcity have actually spread. And you know that if there is no fuel or oil prices are actually high, then you know that definitely transportation, food prices, energy, and every other thing. And we saw the fact that Russia have refused to actually open the Brit Sea so that they can actually bring in grain. Now, that tells a lot for us that we need to do something in our own food production. If not, we are hoping to run into food crisis. So I hope that this will be an eye-opener for the government and actually also other agencies that are actually going to be working with them. We need to do something before it actually gets out of hand, because we can see not just is Nigeria going to go into another recession, but there is a global recession. So I hope that we'll look into that. We said that yesterday, that we have to pay more mind to the agri sector. There's so much, even looking at other natural resources that we have. We are yet to tap into those resources. So I think it's high time we begin to go into those sectors. If not, we can actually see that we're going to look at more red lights than it is presently. So I hope that we'll do something about it.
Of course, it's not a surprising thing that food prices will go high, because it's a usual thing in Nigeria. I would say that whenever there's fuel scarcity or there's an increase in fuel price, that there's always an inflation when it comes to food, because yes, transportation is included in the cost of making this food available. So once there is a hike in price of fuel, or there is scarcity of fuel, then that has always been the thing. Once fuel goes up, food also becomes high. The prices of food go high. Then the second thing is that when we want to focus on agriculture, I feel the problem is that, which is normal, some crops grow better in other places, and we know that specific states are like the mega producers of certain crops and all of that. But this will also show us that there's a need for us to like start finding means of growing other crops here. Meaning that if, let's say, beans is only grown, let me say, in Gombe State, then perhaps Plateau State should also start thinking of trying to grow beans also. And we can do that. We can do that experiment for like other food, so that it will help in like general, where we don't have to interdepend. Although it's important, there's nothing wrong with that, but let it be that we also have some percentage of a certain crop or a certain food that is well consumed also in our state, so that there will be a balance in the long run, and we will not solely depend that, okay, certain food must be brought totally from another place. There's nothing wrong with that, but this will also help us in agriculture and when it comes to food production and scarcity in the nearest future.
You know, you said there's nothing wrong with that, and I think that is even where other measures and policy need to be set by the government.
True.
And then we also have to look at possibly security, because imagine if there is security in the country and also that our roads are very good, that we don't have to keep struggling, and then with all the flooding, you know that it won't be a problem.
It won't.
Like for instance, a place like Niger Delta, definitely we know they can't farm any produce over there because of the oil spillage on their land and on their, and then just like you said, there's no the problem. Nigeria must face sanction. This is coming from the federal government. And we have some the big story, which is on terror alert. Federal government reassures Nigerians and pushes back against US and UK. The writer following that, foreign minister to warn ambassadors against alarming advisories. Terror alert, irresponsible, go about your normal businesses. This is coming from the security chiefs. And then Transcorp Hotel set new security protocol. FCT police meet hotel operators. Well, I hope that we actually take this terror alert seriously, regardless of what it is. We saw that when the first alert came, just last week, we saw a number of ISWAP terrorists that were attacked, some pistols and other ammunition that were found in their custody. So regardless of what it is, yes, we should not be alarmed. We should go about our normal activities. But I think it's important that we are also sensible and very, very security alert at all points in time, because you cannot lose your guard because you feel that, okay, finally, we're at peace. I mean, these people are cooking something somewhere. I always say that. So I hope that we don't get carried away with the peace we're enjoying presently, because they always take advantage of that. And before you realize, they strike when you less expect.
It only shows how unserious we are. We have to wait for UK or US to give us a terror alert. It only shows that we are sleeping. Like, the bottom line is, you can't wait. We shouldn't wait for such terror alert. Like, these people already have this thing. They're cooking something up, and we cannot overemphasize this. We just have to keep saying it. We can't wait until we hear that there is a terror alert before we up our game concerning security. It means we are sleeping. Do we have to wait till something bad happens before we do something? It has become a habit in this country, and we need to stop. We need to change. Our government needs to be better. We shouldn't wait till something happens or till we hear before we will tighten up our security. It shows that we are lacking, and it's not a good thing.
Of course. And we have a picture story here where we can see commuters stranded as Lagos commercial drivers protest extortion. And we can see the picture story here where people are really, really stranded trying to hop into. So I hope something will be done about this extortion that the Lagos commercial drivers are actually, going through. Downside of the paper, we have marketers protest 185 naira per litre fuel and threaten strike. Well, this is not something we want to see, so we hope something will be done about that, where Ipman marketers and also the NNPC will also look into that. The Lagos-Ibadan highway kidnappers kill captive over ransom collected I take that story. Lagos-Ibadan highway kidnappers kill captives over ransom, collected 3.2 million naira from my father. This is coming from a lady. The last story on the Punch paper we have on 2023 elections. Don't be partisan, Buhari cancel police. And you can find that story on page 30. That's all on the Punch newspaper.
On the Blueprint newspaper, 5 days after planned Naira redesign, foreign exchange scarcity worsens, and the writer says currency crashes 800 to dollar at parallel market. Decision ill-timed will worsen economy, Kachuku warns, and you can continue reading that on page 6. And the big story, federal government to citizens, US, UK, Germany, and others terror alerts false and irresponsible. The federal government urges Nigerians residents to go about their businesses. They can't scare us in Nigeria. This is coming from Governor Sule. We are on top of the situation, Irabo assures. Buhari jets out to London on medical vacation, and you can read that on page 6. TEDFund as the harbinger of research and learning. Avocado pear has several economic potential. This is coming from the Director General of RMRDC. NCC committed to federal government's anti-corruption crusade. This is coming from Dambata. Still on the Blueprint, court dismisses group's bid to stop certification forgery suit against Tinubu, and you can read more of that on page 16. And at the downside of the paper, at least $1.5 billion Lekki Deep Sea Port completed, 170,000 jobs expected. Nnamdi Kanu to approach Supreme Court over federal government stay of execution order. Outsourcing of garment making from UAE, Senegal over soon. This is coming from Naseni. South Africa's biggest bank out to acquire banks in Nigeria and Kenya. Remain neutral, ensure peaceful conduct of 2023 poll, Buhari tells police. And that's all the news on the Blueprint.
On this day newspaper, China harbor completes construction of $1.5 billion Lekki deep sea port, and the writer says Sanwo-Olu vows to provide transportation infrastructure. And we're having I Sold My Properties to sponsor 3,000 students, local and overseas. This is coming from Kwakwasu, where you can find on page 44. And we have federal government tighten measures against Ebola outbreak, and that you can also find inside the paper. Buhari says police must remain impolitical, ensure peaceful 2023 polls. Recommit to free, fair election once Nigerians to elect their choice. The big story, which is coming from the NSA, Nigeria not under any heightened sense of insecurity. I want to dispel any illusion about any. It is false, it is irresponsible for anyone to give that signal. We are working with our foreign partners in a response. Well, you can read more of that story on page 10. And the picture story here we can see is in relation to the first story, where the Lekki seaport construction has been completed by the Chinese contractors. And that's all on this day newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, construction of $1.5 billion Lekki port completed. Lekki Freeport Terminal takes over. Gunmen abduct 4 Ibadan-bound travelers in Ekiti. 2 killed in fresh attack in Plateau. And you can read that on page 26. Kidnappers' bullet left skin-deep wound on my head, says Abba JX UIDVC. And the writer says police mom on ransom, 5 others still in captivity. And you can read more of that story on page 27. And the big story on the Nigerian Tribune, U.S. security alert needless, no cause for alarm. This is coming from NSA. I would like to assure all the citizens of this country that my exaggerated sense of insecurity, any hype about a disintegration of our security forces, intelligence agency is unfounded. The issue of Nigerians being made to panic is unnecessary. I will want to dispel any illusion about any heightened sense of insecurity. It is false. It is irresponsible for anybody to give that signal. And this is coming from Mongonu. Still on the Nigerian Tribune, Buhari leaves for medical checkup in UK. 1 year after Ikoyi building collapse, government yet to demolish 2 other towers. Lagos Anglican Bishop Olumakeye dies at 53, and you can read more of that story on page 53. On page 3, Meeti Allah lists conditions for peace in troubled community, demands gazetting of 415 grazing reserves, and you can read more of that on page 3. Passengers stranded pay more as bus drivers begin 7-day protest over alleged exhaustion in Lagos. And you can read more of that on page 26. Atiku Group false endorsement of Tinubu in Akure. And the last story is on Ebola. NCDC warns Nigerians against non-critical travel to Uganda. You can read more of that on page 3. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Yeah, Rachel, that story is still on your paper that say Meeti Allah lists conditions for peace in troubled communities, demand gazetting of 415 grazing reserves. We're still on this. This is a story that has been on, I think, since last year, where we had the issue that they needed open grazing reserve, and we have seen the destruction that most of these cattle have actually caused to lots of farmland. You see that after planting your crops, and then before you realize that something is happening. And we are still talking about having some gazetting, having some, because I think there was a time Gumi came out to see, to give some of the conditions that some of the terrorist group gave, that for them to be able to release the, especially the Abuja-Kaduna Railway, they gave some list of demands that they have, among which was that they needed a ministry of headers. And you begin to ask, what will this ministry add to the GDP of Nigeria? I mean, it's high time that our government officials do something. What are the security agencies doing for a story like this to make it to the paper? That means we need to wake up and do something. If they are giving that condition for peace in troubled community, that means they have been causing lots of trouble.
Of course.
And then what are the security agents in that place doing about this? I don't know why a group can feel very comfortable to come out and just say whatever they feel like saying, where we have a government. We are not running a terrorist country. We are running a democratic country. That means you have actually, we have government that's supposed to rise up and do the expected, that is expected of them to do. So I hope that we don't just look at this story as one of the stories, and before realizing there will be trouble in another part of the country as a result of our own negligence, folding our arms and believing that things will just, I hope that the government will actually, rise up and do the expected.
And if you read in between the lines, you will see that they are admitting to be the cause of the troubles in community, because I can't come and give condition and say, if you meet this need, then I'll stop causing trouble. It means I'm admitting to the fact that I am causing trouble to this community. So for these people to actually give this condition, they're already telling themselves, they're already telling the government, we are the problem of the community. And what the government is supposed to do is not to come to meet their conditions, no. Is to treat that situation as a problem as it is. Because these people, as far as I'm concerned, they are saying, you know what, we are the cause of the problem. If you meet our condition, we will stop causing this problem. And that's them admitting to be a problem to Nigeria. And then the government needs to treat them as a problem.
Of course, they have to. Well, let's look at the Guardian newspaper. Federal government dismisses the U.S. insecurity alert in Abuja, says alarm needless hype, which you can find on page 3. And we have Akitoye accuses Tinubu of planning to destroy Yoruba self-determination group. Whereabouts of Kanu APC senatorial candidate unknown, EFCC tells the court. And the big story here, dollar scarcity worsened as banks ration withdrawal of the BTC stretch. The rider following that, we can't give what we don't have, banks tell customers. High cash holders mop up black market, push Naira to the highway. Then we have the BDC dealers at Eco Hotel trade over 2 billion naira on Friday. And the finance ministry boils over a cold war between the CBN and the minister. And another one here says alternative fiscal monetary coordinating structure required. CBN Act needs to specify working relationship between the two offices. And yesterday during the program Business and Finance, we mentioned the fact that if the CBN is having the backing of the governor, or the backing of the president on actually redesigning our currency, the naira, that's from 100 naira to 1,000 naira, and then we are having the Ministry of Finance, the minister specifically saying she is not aware, then that means there is a confusion between these two ministries, because they are expected to work together. And if you're having somebody from the Ministry of Finance being part of the board where they are redesigning the currency, the present one that will be hoping to see the naira, then what is the problem? Is it that there's confusion? Are they not communicating? Don't they have meetings together? Don't they relate together? So I just hope that all of this confusion they are having will be addressed. And the fact that dollar is even scarce presently. We hear where students abroad are actually finding it stranded, finding it difficult because there's no dollar that is being released for them to be able to, walk around their daily pay, their tuition fees and all of that. So whatever it is, and that has even affected our naira, which we saw earlier on the paper, that our naira keep devaluating every now and then. We cannot underrule the fact that oil theft has actually even contributed to what we are facing presently with our naira being depreciated. So we hope that something will be done, and that these two ministries can actually put aside whatever personal interests they are having, work together for the better of the economy presently.
And I like what Uba is saying here, alternative fiscal monetary coordinating structure required. And this will go back to something I said, that it's not just enough for the CBN to tell us that the reason behind them changing the face of our notes is to make people that have buried money bring it at all. We need to know that whatever you're doing is going to be sustained for a long period of time, and that's why there's a need for an alternative fiscal and monetary coordinating structure required to make sure that this thing is not just a short-time thing, that in the long run we can say that, we didn't only change the face of our naira, but that there were other structures put in place that would give value to our currency, that we can wake up 3 years later and say, naira to dollar is back to 300. We can wake up and say, okay, there's no inflation, because it's not just about changing the face. Like, what are the other structure you're putting in place to make sure that this thing you're doing, that in the short run, it doesn't even have to be long run, in the short run, that Nigerians could start seeing that, our currency is gaining some kind of value, and the exchange rate to the dollar is now going back to where it is, where it is better, and that it will help our economy grow. So I just hope that these structures will be put in place, not just for a mere reason of trying to get money launderers to bring out their money and all of that. That's too shallow. We need a deeper reason for this.
No, if you actually look at it, there are deeper reasons to just having money launderers bringing it up, but it's a way, because it's a fact that it's ideal that for every 5 to 8 years the currency is being redesigned. It's a way to actually control counterfeit, because if there are times where you go and then you're being given the counterfeit money, and then you don't actually know the money that the CBN will release, and then sometimes you see that it's over what they are actually having. So it's a way of actually controlling all of this. So I think these are some of the structures on ground. Well, let's look at other stories still on the Guardian newspaper. As Buhari jet out again, Horuwa stresses need for a healthy leader in 2023. Not just a healthy leader in 2023, but also the health sector needs to be looked into, because if our health sector was well taken care of, I don't think the president will be out of the country, because this is enriching another country, whether we like it or not. And possibly he might be there for 2 weeks or more. Only God knows how long he will be there, depending on how fit he feels before coming back. But then, people applauded the vice president when he had his surgery here in the hospital. He gave updates, and people are they're excited that he was able to, make our doctors feel that, yes, they are actually qualified to treat him, even though he is a second citizen in the country presently. So I think this is something that we need to look into, and this is what we need, the next leader that will be leading this country come 2023. We need a healthy leader. We need a leader that will put education, put health, agriculture, and every other sector in front, and then take care of our doctors, so they do not have the need to leave all the country at the end of the day. The midwives, the nurses, we need all of these health workers one way, whether we like it. Ex-diplomat tells Buhari, and you can find that story on page 6, downside of the paper, we have other stories, so you can do well to get the Guardian newspaper, read any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Daily Sun, stay of execution, Nnamdi Kanu heads to Supreme Court, and you can read that on page 3. Uzodinma seeks mandatory oath taken by candidate against violence. And the big story on the Daily Sun, Abuja terrorism alert. Federal government confirms suspects arrest. Says security concern raised by US, UK being addressed. Urges Nigerians to go about businesses without fear. Herdsmen list conditions for peace in communities, demand gazetting of 415 grazing reserves. Obi disowns manifesto in circulation, says it's not approved. Buhari's jet out for 2 weeks medical check in London, and you can read that on page 27. My salary stopped for exposing corruption at Finance Ministry, claims female staff. Letter of credit saga, Yerima seeks federal government support for earpiece. Ex-UIDVC recounts close shave with dead in kidnappers' den. And you can read more of that on page 4. Still on the Daily Sun, Buhari warns police against unprofessional conduct during election, and the rider says reiterates commitment to credible election, and you can read that on page 26. And on the downside of the paper, Atiku mocks Tinubu over visit to Fashoranti, and you can read that on page 6. And that's all the news on Daily Sun.
Yeah, Richard, I thought you were going to read that picture story where you can see students marking the International Day of the Girl Child with a book presentation. We cannot, rule out the fact that we need to really, really encourage the girl child education, especially in the northern part of the country, where the girl child don't get the opportunity to actually study, or if she gets to study, she stops at a particular level because this belief that when she marries, she's no longer going to be benefiting to her father's house. And we can see that regardless of it is, you can see that even very little number of, or will I say, if you look at the numbers of women that are being represented from our parliament,